Well, good afternoon as of 4 minutes past 12 instead of good morning. We hope you're having a fantastic week. The royals have been on the move again this week. We've seen lots of pictures of Kate and William going to Wales, alongside some stories which we haven't had the chance to cover over a couple of weeks over the summer holidays. But we're back so we can talk about them. If you have got any questions or any comments regarding any of the topics that we talk about today, then just pop them in the comment section and we can get them answered for you. So, of course, without further ado, we are joined by Daily Express's royal correspondent, Richard Palmer. Richard, welcome back. Hello.
Hi.
It's been quite a few weeks for the royals, and to kind of get this condensed down into half an hour is quite difficult, but it is a challenge that we're going to try and do today. Now, a story that's been picked up not only in the UK, but of course the US as well, has been the possibility that Meghan is going to be venturing into politics. Obviously, she's not a senior working member of the royal family, but she is part of the royal family. And obviously, royals mixing with politics, we've spoken about this before, can be quite a tricky area. Lots of rumours which sort of seem to die down, but we come to you to kind of get some facts and truth out of this. So what is the deal with this story?
Well, it's a mystery why it keeps coming back up, really. It was a Sunday newspaper in the UK that suggested that she was a long shot to be named the next Senator of California after the sitting one of the sitting senators died, unfortunately, at the age of 90. And I have to say, I didn't. I think it was picked up by the New York Post, but I didn't see the Washington Post, the New York Times, CBS, NBC, ABC, whatever. I didn't see them going with this story. And the reporter who wrote it is a fantastic journalist who's got a massive, magnificent track record on breaking big stories. This one keeps coming back, but I'm finding it really, I've never really found any evidence to stack it up. And, I said on social media, just a quick tweet, that I've always found it difficult to believe, partly because she and Harry have proved to be so thin-skinned, in handling the scrutiny and the criticism that goes with being a member of the royal family. That I'm just not sure that the rough and tumble world of politics is for either of them.
No, but this wouldn't be an impossible feat if she did want to go for it.
Yeah, clearly she sees herself as a sort of social activist, and some of the work she's been doing has certainly been around the edges of the Democratic Party's agenda, certainly there have been a few junior Democrats, I would call them, who have gone on the record and said, it would be great to have her on board doing something for the party. But I just find it a bit difficult to believe that. Now, maybe prove wrong on this, but anyway, the story died a death very quickly, or should have done, because somebody else was chosen instead of her very quickly by the governor of California. But so then it comes back, that seat's up for re-election in, I think it's about 13 months' time. Maybe she'll run then. I'm struggling to believe it, really.
And I'm guessing this would cause a few waves with the royal family if she was to step into American politics, because then you've got international relations there when they're hosting countries, politicians over in the UK for democratic visits. Diplomatic visits. This might cause a bit of an issue.
Well, yes. I mean, they have got the get out that, she's no longer a working member of the family, and she's a private individual in that sense, so she can do what she wants. But you're right, it would be potentially embarrassing. I know there was huge sensitivity at the palace, at Buckingham Palace, when the Duchess of Sussex intervened in an election issue. About voter registration, whatever, and voter suppression. And, it was possible to argue that what she was doing was part of a cross-party initiative, and there were ways of defending what she did, but it was seen by the then US President, Donald Trump, as an attack on him and the Republican Party. And it was at a time when the UK was trying to negotiate a trade deal with the US, and there was acute embarrassment at the palace about it all, and that they really felt very uncomfortable about it. So I think as the US is preparing for a general election coming up fairly soon, I think there will be again huge sensitivity about it all. You can get proved wrong in this business, but I would be very, very surprised if she stood for election.
And then, of course, if she got into American politics, and that reaffirms the fact that they're going to be in the US for the inevitable, because she will have to be in the US if she wants to get into US politics, which is a whole nother story.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And there are other factors that come into play. I mean, there is a complicating factor in that she's got a royal title. And, I suspect this is something that lawyers could end up arguing about. But there is a part of the US Constitution that essentially says you shouldn't accept foreign titles or other emoluments. And I've certainly spoken to one person who pointed out that there was an English aristocrat who served as a state representative in the 19th century in the US. So it wouldn't be completely unprecedented, I don't think. But as I understand it, Meghan would have to ask for Congress for permission to stand as a representative, and I just think it could get very messy and very embarrassing. And
has Harry ever been very vocal about politics as well? Because whatever Meghan does, whatever Harry does, it's reflected on them both. So, of course, if Meghan does this will have a knock-on effect with Harry. So, for all the years that you've been reporting on Harry, has he ever been very vocal about US politics?
About US politics, there's been the odd dig. He was recorded by some Russian pranksters. It's probably the kindest expression I can use for them. And I seem to remember him talking about Trump during that recording. He's also at times expressed frustration with the British political system, I think, but he's usually been pretty careful to avoid overt criticism of government ministers and government policy. I remember, for example, covering him visiting a youth centre in Leicester that was at risk of being closed, and the backdrop to it was that the Conservative government's cuts had meant councils all over the country were having to shut leisure centres and youth centres. And he was essentially saying to the young people there, I can't, I have to be really careful what I say. I can't publicly criticise the government, but I want to help you guys as much as I can. We need to find alternative ways of keeping centres like this open.
Yeah.
He's pretty alive to the sensitivities of it all, but because he's not under the same restrictions now.
No, of course. So it would be very different. Let's have a look at a poll just to see what the Daily Express audience would think about Meghan going into politics. Let's have a look. Would you like to see Meghan Markle venture into politics? No, 90%. But that is the Daily Express audience, and they are obviously UK based. So there we are. They're not interested. But the last time we spoke, Richard, Meghan and Harry's popularity seemed to be drifting in the US, going down. So at a time like that, going into politics surely would be the last thing you'd want to do. Or are they just trying to find their feet and find what they want to do next?
Well, there is. I mean, I hadn't even really considered that, but there is that point, isn't there, that commercially they need to make money, and if you stand for election as a representative of one political party, you are inevitably alienating the other half of the country, effectively.
Okay, fine. Let's move on to senior working royals who are in the UK then and see what they've been up to. They've had a busy week. They've had a busy couple of weeks. They had a very successful, by the looks of things, France state visit. There's Kate. Is it this in Wales, wasn't it? Well, that picture wasn't.
No, that picture was actually in Bracknell yesterday. Okay. So, the Princess of Wales was visiting a Ukrainian refugee community hub, which is raising money for the relief effort back in Ukraine, and also, providing support for Ukrainians who are over here at the moment in the UK. That was quite a sweet conversation. She was at that picture. She was talking to a little girl whose mother's a psychologist, a Ukrainian psychologist, who came over here on the Homes for Ukraine program. So she's staying with the family. They're staying with the family in Bracknell, and Kate was talking to her. She was just charming her, talking to her about music, what songs she liked, what music she liked, and she was telling her that Princess Charlotte had been singing a hymn to her that morning, "Shine, Jesus, Shine," and it had made her very happy. So
Sweet. So
yes.
When she's back at work, obviously she's had the luck of having the summer off. You can see her sort of refreshed, as it were. Do you think she's happy to be back doing this, or do you think she very much wants to stay at home, or women can do both? What do you think, Richard?
Well, yeah, I think she wants to do both. I mean, I think it's clear that she's made it clear that her children are her priority, but she also wants to use her position to to be a force for good in the UK and around the world. But we've seen, for example, that she's not going to accompany William to Singapore when he goes out in November for the Earthshot Prize ceremony, third one I think that will be. And the reason she's not going is George is doing exams that week, as we understand it, and she wants to stay with him and make sure he's okay with his exams. Poor boy has been complaining that he's saying, "Mummy, I'm getting tested all the time." And, he's 10 now, but he's got a lot of years to do, unfortunately, as we all know. Been through
as we all know, at 10 years old, he'll look back in a couple of years' time and he'll think, "Oh, what was all the fuss about?"
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But that brings me round to the question then of the fact that she obviously wants to keep that family life very private and protect the children. We did touch on this a couple of months ago, but you said exams are coming round the corner. The school terms and stuff are starting. Do you think we're going to hear about exam results or anything like that, Richard? Your predictions, or is it just very much going to be kept in the household, as it were?
Yeah, I who knows in the future, but I would hope that we would probably find out what GCSEs and A-levels
Yeah.
future king obtains, but I don't think we'll know much more than that in terms of exam results. And I think I mentioned before, his father and his uncle, when they were at school, there were regular updates. And so, when the King Charles was at school, there'd be pictures of the school pantomime, things like that.
Yes, yeah.
There's been nothing like that, no access. So they've, as far as I understand it, have got no intention of sort of releasing that sort of stuff. And of course, we in the media are prevented from going after that sort of thing because there's an ethics code, the editor's code, for the press regulator, which effectively says that children have a right to complete their education without being pursued by the media.
Yeah, which is absolutely fair enough. And Charles and Camilla have been very busy. Kate and William have been very busy. But who else has stepped up to the plate recently since the royals have been coming back off their long summer break?
Yeah, well, Princess Anne, as ever. Edward and Sophie have been out and about quite a lot. I should sort of briefly mention the state visit to France, which went well, I think. I mean, there was a bit of controversy on the final day because the King and Queen travelled from Paris to Bordeaux by train, and there was a perfectly good train journey that the rest of us took. What
was the reasoning for that?
Environmental activists went up the wall about that, but the palace argued that they were instructed by the French to do that because of security concerns, effectively because the French media leaked the itinerary and sort of revealed details that were supposed to remain confidential at that time for security reasons.
And was this a plane put up by the French state?
No, I think it was their plane that they brought over. I mean, that was another matter. I mean, it's very easy to travel from London to Paris, by train, but they were in Scotland, then came down to London. They opted to fly, and partly the reason was because they were going back to Scotland at the end of the trip, and they're still up in Scotland at the moment. And the King was out doing official duties yesterday. So the King opted to follow really his late mother's work pattern, and spend quite a bit of the autumn up at Balmoral.
And is that something Camilla wants to do too?
Well, I think they enjoy time in Scotland together. I mean, she doesn't spend as much time. I think she does have a tendency to head back down to Wiltshire, to her home there, to spend time with her family after a while. But yeah, I think Birk Hall there. So they've got so many homes coming out their ears, but they were certainly spending a few weeks living in Balmoral Castle, but then I think they've gone back now to Birk Hall, and which is sort of on the edge of the estate. They love that place, so. Yeah.
So that's sort of in brief explains the plane analogy. But is Charles aware of how contradictory he sounds when he speaks about climate change? And this is something he is genuinely, I hate using the word passionate because it's so overused and I find it cliche, but genuinely passionate about it. And then he gets a plane. It does sort of, yes, it is a bit annoying to get a train across to Paris if you're going to Scotland, but it's not, it's not unreasonable to do so, and it would be a few extra hours on your day, which for a lot of people would be fine. And I do understand they are the King and the Queen, but it does sound a little bit of a stretch, from my opinion. Richard, is he aware of the public opinion and the backlash of this?
Yeah, I think he is, and I think it's something that they're constantly facing criticism over. And you know, I have to say as well, the Prince and Princess of Wales, you know, they are using helicopters an awful lot at the moment.
Okay.
There's an argument that, well, the palace leases the helicopter, so it might as well use it. That's always the argument put forward. And, you know, it's quicker. They're able to do more things if they use a helicopter. But, you know, I think there's a few eyebrows raised about some of the short hop helicopter journeys. I mean, I was down in Sittingbourne in Kent last week covering Kate. I'm pretty sure she didn't take a helicopter the sort of, I don't know, 10 miles yesterday to Bracknell. From their home, but she took a helicopter to Sittingbourne, which probably would have taken 45 minutes in the car, maybe an hour.
Yeah, and of course, when they get the royal entourage, as it were, the road's completely clear. I mean, it's not like
they get blue lights through, so. There's not constant stuff in the press about it, but I think it's there in the background. People are thinking, oh God, you know, they're talking about climate change all the time, and yet they're doing that. I mean, clearly some of the fuel that they're using now, certainly for the aircraft, and I think for the helicopters, is more environmentally friendly, so that helps their argument.
And are all of their cars that they travel in now, are they all electric?
Yeah, they tend to be. Yeah. You know, they are leading the way in some respects. But I think you do have to. There is always that argument about security as well. I mean, clearly, so to go back to the state visit to France, if the public knew that the King and Queen were arriving at the Gare du Nord at midday on whatever day it was, you know, they'd know exactly which train they're coming in on, and it would be it's quite a big security operation to secure every bridge, every bit of track all the way along. You know, who's to stop somebody planting a bomb? That would be the argument.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a fair one when you think of it like that. I suppose. Okay, well, they got their day-to-day, duties going on, and we only hear parts of it, and which really do hit the front pages. So I wanted to ask on a poll, are you interested or, you know, hearing about what the royals do day to day, or are you only interested really in the big hitting headlines, which we've had a few over the past few years? So this is interesting. They said no 80%, yes 20%. Now, Richard, from your perspective as a royal correspondent, you file lots and lots of different stories. What are the stories which get picked up, which go viral, and why?
Well, I think the public is always more interested in how they are as a family together, how they all get on, what they're really like, what they're saying about their kids, whatever. It's and, you know, I've talked about this on TV before, and sometimes there are sensitivities about it, but I don't see why there should be, because I think it's similar to politics and other showbiz, whatever. There is always, you know, people talk about the contract, the unwritten contract between the press and the royal family, but I think it's, as I say, I think it's true of other bits of media reporting as well, that there is always a bit of tension between what they want to tell the world that they're doing, what they think is important, and what the world thinks is important. And we as journalists are sort of in the middle, and we're trying, you know, the trick I think is to balance the two. And so, you know, I think there is a sort of uneasy agreement, if you like, that we write about, you know, we try to find the angles that the public are going to be most interested in. So them talking about the family, you know, or talking about their kids or whatever. And, but then, you know, they were talking about it as they visited Ukrainian refugees, or as they did this thing that they want to tell you about.
And are they aware
melding the two, I think, and giving the public an accurate picture of what they get up to.
And are they aware of, well, I know obviously Charles and Camilla will be very much aware, but, other members of the royal family, are they aware, it's sort of a two-way street in the sense that they have to give a little bit about their personality and their personal life, so we can give the coverage about whatever they might be pushing, charity work, etc.?
Yeah, I think so. Although I have to say, there are members of the family who don't really court publicity and seem to actively discourage it. And Princess Anne is one who just doesn't seem at all interested in promoting the work that she's doing. And
why is that?
Well, I think she's had spells in her life where she's been the focus of attention. She's not particularly found it that pleasant. And she just gets on. She gets on with sort of very low profile work. And I have to say, actually, that her standing with the public is very high. So, you could say, well, she's perhaps an exception to the rule, that she shows that you can do this work and you don't need the media. But they do, against that, I mean, if she's helping Save the Children, for argument's sake, launch a big charity appeal about a crisis somewhere, they need publicity for that. So they need the press and the public to be interested.
Yeah.
Again, the Earl and Countess, well, I was going to say Earl and Countess of Wessex, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, as they now are, Edward and Sophie. Again, you get press releases about what they've done the day before quite often, but they don't actively seem to want people going out on their overseas visits covering them. And there's a difficult balance there, I think, because I think for the palace, part of it as well is just about how they organise themselves, and if they have to arrange a press call for every visit that Edward and Sophie do, for example, that involves a lot of their personnel doing a lot of getting more, having to be there, and I just think that those members of the family, they do their job, but they're much lower profile, and in consequence, they get very little coverage in papers. I guess the coverage is about the King and Queen and William and Kate.
And William and Kate have, over the years, got to know the media a lot better, and the way that they handle themselves with them, would you say, is a lot more polished? It's like a polished routine, as it were, someone who literally stands next to them. Richard, would you say that's what it's like?
Yeah, they're very good. They're very good at what they do. I mean, I always say that they just treat us really like as part of the furniture. So there's very little acknowledgement of the media. Occasionally there might be a little aside, a little joke, but very rarely, I have to say. Charles and Camilla, the King and Queen, much more so. There's quite a bit more interaction. If you think about having to do that job, and you're going to be walking into a room and there's going to be 30 people and all eyes will be on you, and oh, by the way, there's going to be a TV camera and two print reporters and a radio reporter and a couple of press officers. You just have to sort of, it's not a natural thing to walk into that situation and be, so they just have to try and put the cameras to one side. And
everything to the side. And you said there, you mentioned about Charles and Camilla, that's interesting that they're a lot more open with the press in terms of making more sort of, I guess, conversation directly with them, which... Yeah. If you spoke to any member of the public about Charles and Camilla, with all of the press that they've had over the years, you'd think perhaps that would be quite the opposite of what they would be like. So I guess Richard, why? Why are they so open with the press? Is that part of their personality, or is it again part of the strategy?
Yeah, I think it is part of their personality. I think they're much more open than some other members of their family. I think I may have mentioned this before, but I go back to when the King, or the Prince of Wales as he then was, got COVID, and one of his senior advisors said to me that, I knew we had to announce it pretty quickly because he's got so many people he was telling about, so many, wide circle of friends. It was bound to get out.
Yeah.
William is very much more self-contained and keeps things closer to his chest. And as you may remember, it only emerged months and months later that he'd actually had COVID at around the same time.
Well, there we go. Okay, then. All very interesting hearing about stuff like that, Richard. It's not usually a path we go down, but I think it kind of gives a bit of an insight into your job, sort of day to day. We'll quickly touch on this, as I appreciate Will, the producer, in the background saying it's 30 minutes and counting. But we have had a couple of weeks off, so I think we're allowed a bit of extra time. The story that keeps on going, rumours of a healing in the family. Any truth to it? Are we going to see a big reunion for Christmas?
Not that I'm aware of at the moment. I don't know where that came from. And it is interesting to me that there's sort of an alternative news agenda that appears on websites these stories don't appear in print. By and large. So, for example, when I was, I was actually at a family funeral, and my mum said to me, "Oh, breaking news! Harry's going to meet his father when he comes back to the UK before he goes to the." Before he goes to the Invictus Games. And there was a whole flurry of stories on various websites saying this was going to happen, and some slightly more speculative saying it could happen. But none of that appeared in print, because there wasn't much sign of it being true.
Do you think these stories sometimes, obviously, royal commentators have opinion, and very much it's curd and speculative, and it's very much of their own, looking into the royal family with the knowledge that they may know. But is any of these stories which are regarding the US side, do you think any of that comes from US PR firms, etc.? Because they work very differently to what the UK PR and press teams work like. It's a whole different strategy over there.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I'm afraid. I do. From what I understand, the Sussexes' PR operation has changed tack a few times, and there was a period when they were saying, "We won't brief the media, even people we consider to be friendly media." About anything sort of off the record, on background. Everything will be, on the record, public, that you can attribute to a spokesman or spokeswoman for the Sussexes. And then that seems to have gone away, and they've gone back to selective briefing. But also, interestingly, I didn't go, but at the Invictus Games there were representatives of some of the media that they don't want to speak to, but their media team were briefing, and were I think quite helpful. So maybe there's some sign of a bit of a softening there. I don't know, but because it's so difficult as a journalist to cover, and I really don't cover them very often. It's so difficult if they just say, well, they just refuse to respond to queries from your media organisation and many other media organisations.
Yeah. And then how are you supposed to get the actual truth of it if you don't have any information at all?
Exactly. And, and I think I'm checking myself. I was going to say something. I think I better not say anything more.
Yeah.
But,
no. Well, then, let's leave it there then.
Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Let's move on from that and go on to royal events. I got asked this question the other day. When's the next royal event going to be? We've had the past couple of years. We've had coronation. We've had jubilees. We've also had some very sad moments in there, of course, funerals. And they have very much been the headlines. Of course, we've had in the mix, we've had a book, we've had a Netflix documentary as well, which aren't planned royal events, but believe you me when I say that they were on every single front page virtually, including one time, I think, The Guardian. So if that really was quite something in terms of royal coverage. So, Richard, the big question is, when's the next royal event going to happen?
Well, there's a landmark birthday coming up in November, isn't there? With the King's going to be 75. The word from the palace on that is that he doesn't want to make a big thing of it because he feels that there have been so many big occasions of late, some sad, as you say, and some celebratory. So that'll be low key, but no doubt there will be, something, no doubt, involving a birthday cake and
many birthday cakes, I'm sure.
Yeah. So that's I suppose a family event, but state events. Well, I don't know. It depends what you mean by a big royal event. I mean,
because when you think about it, we were very lucky in the sense we had 2 big weddings. We had a good few years of big royal events, and to that scale, there won't be one anytime soon. Touch wood, because the only one that I can think of, the next big celebratory one, would be a wedding. It wouldn't be a wedding. It wouldn't even be a wedding. No,
we've got.
Because you've got a few years yet. Yes, you got married very, very early at the age of 80.
Yeah, so
16, actually, with your parents' permission. Anyway, actually, I'll fact check that. I'm not sure that's quite right. I think the law got changed, but no, I don't think that will be on the cards. But no, I don't know when the next one is, Richard. Any clue?
No, not really. But we've got big state occasions, and of course, part of the royal family's role is to, there are state. There's an incoming state visit, South Korea, but there's we've got big overseas visits coming up. William's going to Singapore, and the Queen are widely expected to announce that they're going to go to Uganda. It's been widely reported they're going to go to Uganda. It's not been officially confirmed yet. But you also have them telling our national story, and of course, one of the most solemn day of the year normally is Remembrance Sunday. So we've got that. We've got the King's first state opening of Parliament as monarch. He and Prince William opened Parliament last time round because the Queen wasn't well enough. But so that'll be quite a big occasion.
But to that scale that we've seen over the past couple of years, I'm not sure there will be one.
No, probably for a while now.
You're quite right. There are lots of other events going on, which I'm sure will be on lots of front pages. Okay then, Richard. I think that is all we have time for today. But we can talk about more current issues next week and topics on the Royal Roundup. You can, of course, catch all of our playlists on Facebook, over on Instagram, on Twitter. You name it, we're on there. There's also a WhatsApp community as well, if you fancy joining that for the Royal Stories too. And of course, you can buy the paper, which Richard has all of his exclusives in there as well. And you can follow Richard on @RawReporter to find all of the latest Raw news. Richard, thank you so much. And we'll be back next week.
See you soon.